Here we go. So our Christmas appeal is based around Ethiopia, but given that this is an eco-congregations event, I wanted to just touch base quickly on our climate work. Climate change, climate justice, it's one of the pillars of our work. It's one of our main focuses. We do this both through long-term sustainable development, advocacy and campaigning here at home, and kind of quick intervention humanitarian work responding to emergencies. So the bulk of our work we try to keep in the sustainable development wheelhouse. That's things like community resilience, helping communities in the long term face ongoing challenges and trials with climate change and adapt to their new circumstances as those change. But when there is a natural disaster, we try to respond quickly through our humanitarian branch, and that is our more emergency response. Our Christmas stuff in Ethiopia, specifically the story around the locusts, is a bit of both. It's a quick response to an emergency, but it's through a sustainable development way of working. So it's a little bit of both. We also work, as I said, here at home with government lobbying. So Christian Aid Scotland in particular was really instrumental in the 2019 climate bill. We're catching our breath from that still. And we were gearing up for COP to be in Scotland for 2020. Obviously that is pushed on to next year, but as both Christian Aid and eco congregations, we're working really hard on that right now to be ready for 2021 when it comes to Glasgow. And then we also do a bit of theological framing around the issue of climate. So in groups to be able to talk about and think about why it is both a theological and a church issue, as well as a climate issue and a people issue. So we do a bit on several different fronts with climate work. It's one of our main pieces of work that we do. So our Christmas appeal is in Ethiopia. We've been working in Ethiopia for over 30 years, but it's one of our focuses because people there in poverty are on the front line of the climate crisis. They've had years of drought, and then when it's not a time of drought, it's really heavy rain. So what was a predictable weather pattern is now becoming less and less predictable and more severe. So the droughts are drier, the rains are heavier, and that makes it harder to adapt and harder to grow food. Particularly of issue is locust swarms. So there are locust swarms currently in Ethiopia and other countries around about there, the likes of which they've not seen in about 20 years. So locusts, for their life cycle, need long periods of dry and hot, and then lots and lots of rain. And because they're getting lots of drought and then heavy rains and flooding, the locusts are thriving. So this year alone, farmland, cropland in Ethiopia, about 4 million hectares of cropland, which is equivalent to about half the size of Scotland, has been eaten by swarms of locusts. It's an issue because a small swarm of locusts can eat equivalent to what 35,000 people can eat in a day. So in a country that's already facing climate issues, changing the way that they grow food and feed themselves, sharing that produce with swarms of locusts, creating even more of a hunger issue as well. In one day, a swarm of locusts can eat as much as 35,000 people. Excuse me. So two people that we're highlighting for Christmas are Borgodo. Borgodo is a mother of 5 and a widow. She had her crops devastated by locust swarms, came out of nowhere, ate every green plant in their path, and left us with nothing useful. And then Bodo is a young farmer. He knows what to do with drought, he knows what to do with flooding, but the locusts he wasn't ready for. Bodo in particular is one of those who both had food that he was growing for himself that was eaten by locusts, but he's also a livestock farmer, and the grasslands that he would normally use to feed his flocks were also devastated. So he was fighting it on both fronts. But Bodo is one of the farmers that Christian Aid, through local partners, was able to intervene and help. Particularly with funding from the Scottish government, we were able to act quickly and come in. So we trained local farmers to be able to understand the locust life cycle so that they could intervene at the most efficient point with pesticides to kill them off so that they could save their existing crops. We were also able to protect some surviving crops that way and give them seed to start new ones so that they were able to get a jump start on crops for the next season. Because not only did they lose the food they would have eaten this season, they also would have saved seeds back to plant next time. So we were able to intervene and give them seeds to start on and get a head start for next time with the know-how and knowledge to be able to head the locusts off the pass so that they were ready the next time around. this new set of crops is growing well. People are feeling a lot more confident, including farmers like Borgodo. So that's the hope that we're hoping to build this Christmas. However, it is still an ongoing issue. Some of you will maybe have seen in the news, there's lots of internal violence and displacement within Ethiopia. It's all linked together. So it's in a different part of the country to where the locust swarms are. But because there's violence, people are moving, and they're moving into the areas where the locusts have been. So where food would already have been tight because of climate change, they're now dealing with locust swarms, and now they've got extra mouths to feed. So it's all interconnected. It's an ongoing issue. And the locusts are still on the move. We're trying to work with farmers to alleviate them, but they're still on the move, as well as the other issues of climate that are still ongoing. So it's an ongoing issue. It's not tied up with a bow per se, but we are there and we're working. That is the whistle-stop tour of the Christmas Appeal. Are there any questions? I can't see if you've got hands raised, so we're a small enough group, just unmute yourself if you've got a question.
A comment, perhaps. I think where I've seen a film very, very recently. I think it must have been on one of the wildlife programs when they were trying to film the locust swarms, and although there were so many of them, they were never quite where they were trying to film. And the local people, or some of them, I think it was in Kenya, were lighting fires with green and burning green stuff to create a smoke screen, which seemed to be partially successful, but otherwise it was just a matter of good luck or bad luck as to whether they passed them by or settled. But it was a fascinating film. I think I took notice of it because in the 60s, we had contact through an Australian friend with an Australian girl who came to work for the Locust Research Centre. And I don't think it dawned on me at that time quite what it meant. I mean, that's what the 60s, you know, a long time ago. And well, I mean, it goes back to Bible times, but I think it's just, I don't know what you'd do if you saw that. It just must be so horrible. Yeah. It's interesting to see how Christian Aid is helping.
Yeah, the photos alone give me the heebie-jeebies. I don't like it. But the UN has a tracking portal online, and you can see their sort of projected movement. But like you say, it's really unpredictable. So they can say, you know, we generally think the swarm is moving north to south, but they're not going to be able to pinpoint that down to the farm or down to the local area. So it is a lot of guesswork to get people ready to head them off. And did you have something to say?
Yes, could I just ask if the donations that are given, personal donations that you make to Christian Aid, are they all going to the Christmas Appeal, or is it just to a general fund just now?
The Christmas Appeal is the general fund. So we deploy those wherever it's needed most. So most of it will go anywhere in our overseas work. If you were submitting a check or giving it online, we'd code it against the Christmas Appeal, but it would go into our general fund.
Yes. Thank you.
Overall. Any other questions? Great.
I think that's what you get when you've got a lot of strong supporters involved, Charlie. They could probably tell me a lot more about what Christian Aid are doing as well. I thought it was interesting though. I mean, the locust one is something which very strongly comes from the climate change issue, but the impact of it is devastating on people. So, and on communities, and you know, the wider creation in different areas. But it is part of nature as well. So it's an interesting thing that the way we've tipped the balance has made the problem far worse.
Yeah.
In a lot of places where they wouldn't expect it, and at times that they wouldn't expect it. So I think it's great that it's Christian Aid are raising this as part of the campaign at this point of the year as well. And it's such a strong message for us to share with other people around the world as well, just that there's a solidarity that we've got and the challenges that they're facing. So that was really interesting.
Thanks. It's an interesting one. I'm singing to the choir here, and I know that, and I appreciate that. It's an interesting one in circles where the climate change issue is maybe not seen quite so parallel with Christianity, to be able to say, well, actually, it's not just about trees and polar bears. There's humans that are affected as well, and it's immediate. It's happening right now. Yeah, it adds another layer to it and gives it a bit of a case study to say this is actually an urgent issue. So I've appreciated it from that angle as well. All right, well, I'll move us on then to the alternativity. Oh, there we go. So alternativity, some of you might be familiar with that as well. It was born out of Christian Aid, but it's now its own charity. And it came about in 1996. There was a group of people who were concerned with the way that Christmas was celebrated, mostly in our culture, but the busyness, the stress, and the waste that goes with Christmas felt very, very foreign to them when they read the biblical account of the first Christmas. So they now work with churches to understand and simplify Christmas. Their strapline is Just God, Simply Christmas. So with Christmas, this year, maybe a little bit different, but most of the time when we're celebrating Christmas, it's a busy time, it's a bit stressful. People can sometimes, as much as it's joyful and exciting, people can feel a bit put upon. Unwanted gifts, lots of food gets wasted. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Single-use plastic between the packaging that goes with things that you've maybe got posted or shipped to you, the extra food. If you're traveling, again, maybe not so much this year, but there's lots of extra carbon and petrol that gets used during this period. And it's just a stressful and a busy time. So ALTERnativity wanted to create a resource to have some conversations about ways that we can circumvent this and have a simpler Christmas that's maybe a bit more meaningful and a little bit less stressful. So we'll start with an exercise. You're at a Christmas party. It's one of these, bring a gift, put it under the tree, and you'll choose a gift afterward to open yourself. So general gifts, not for any specific person. There's two gifts. The first one is perfectly packaged. It's in a very nice box. It's got a big bow on it. You can see at the front, it's a prepackaged coffee set. There's a nice big mug and a couple of small bags of coffee inside of it, or tea, if you're a tea drinker. And don't get hung up on the brand. This is just what Google Images gave me. So if you're adamantly anti-Starbucks, it's something else. But it's a very beautifully presented set. The other one is a plain brown gift bag. It's nice, it's not knocked around the edges or anything, but it doesn't have any embellishment in it or on it. On the first look, which one of these would you go for when it's your turn to choose? You don't have to answer, that can be a hypothetical question. Now, what if you knew that inside, okay, so there's your choices. Plain brown gift bag, really pretty set with a bow on it. But inside of the big bag, there are 3 full-sized bags of fair trade coffee from around the world. Often we get hung up on the way that things are presented. We've got a strong culture of presentation, and it can add an extra level of stress and waste in how we present gifts and how we wrap them. So a few fast facts. Consumers in the UK this year will use 227,000 miles of wrapping paper. Over 83 square kilometers of this will end up in the bin by the end of Christmas. All of this wrapping paper creates the need for lots of sticky tape. It's about a roll and a half per household, about 40 million rolls. In addition to this, approximately 42 million pounds of unwanted Christmas presents are thrown into the landfill each year. So gifts that people bought, spent money and time on, but they weren't necessarily what people wanted. They get thrown out by the end of December. So Stephen's gonna Stephen, what do you think? Do you think we should go into breakout rooms, or will we just stay all together since there's only a few of us?
Yeah, we'd probably better just staying together, I think, for this.
Okay. This is the interactive bit then, so we won't go into breakout rooms. We'll stay all together. But have a think, what's the best gift you've ever received? And do you remember how it was wrapped? Have you ever received, I'll read them through and then we'll have a chat and take a second to think about it. Have you ever received a gift that looked amazing, but you were ultimately disappointed with? And how does your household or the people that you spend Christmas with, how do they present gifts? Do you think that you could facilitate an honest conversation about the kinds of gifts that you would appreciate? And do you think that that would go over well?
Interesting questions. Let's see what everybody's thoughts are on that.
And again, we're a small enough group, you can just unmute yourself if you
Yeah.
So if I
just swapping rooms with my husband.
Fine. Can you still read the whole slide?
Oh.
You see the slide okay, everybody?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
just I've moved your faces. Oops. I've moved your faces across it so I can't see it, but I didn't know if that blocked it for you or not.
I would have to say that I don't really remember what any of the gifts I've received are.
This is an easy one for me because the question came up last night because in our church Advent study, we have been using ALTERnativity material, and that was one of the questions we were left with for next week. And I immediately we had a vacancy, and I've been leading worship quite a lot. And then after we had a new minister who served abroad, so he's very supportive of Christian aid. And he took a break after Christmas, New Year, after his first 3 months. Maybe a good job he did take a break because, of course, a few weeks later, COVID hit. But I took the last service of the year, which I took the Epiphany readings for. And the best present I ever got, it's a bit of a story, but it was from a friend in New Zealand. And it happened to be a very snowy day when I opened her letter that I received just before Christmas. And I'd been up in the hills doing my duties, feeding the sheep, came home absolutely exhausted, opened this envelope, which was sort of strangely bulky. And I know Myrtle could get an awful lot onto a very small piece of paper, but there was a plastic bag inside. And the reason for the plastic bag was it contained wildflowers, and Myrtle had been sitting writing summer, of course, in New Zealand, and she was on the North Island as well. So she had looked out the window and seen the wildflowers blooming in their hay meadow in front of the house. Thought of me, gone out and picked some and popped them in the envelope.
Ooh, lovely.
And I stuck them in a glass, quickly stuck them in a glass of water. And, you know, they were still fresh 3 days later, which was some sort of a miracle, you know, having come through the Royal Mail and airmail bags and everything. And I mean, it's many years ago now, but I have never, ever forgotten it because it lifted my spirits. It cost virtually nothing except the stamp, and the letter was coming anyway. And it was just an impulse given with love. And I still get a bit tearful whenever I think about it because of the effect it had on me. And I think that is always going to be the best sort of present.
A whole new theme for another sermon, I think, Trish.
Well, I'm doing a sermon doing the service in 2 churches in Kelso, first Sunday of the new year. But I think I'll have to tweak. I've 1 or 2 other ideas.
So you do remember how it was wrapped, but not necessarily because it was.
Well, I mean, obviously it had to be kept fresh, and I mean, it was. I can't remember all that was in it. You know, there was clover and daisies and other things, but it was just to have that and open it and smell. I'm used to getting the smell of hay when I open a bale of hay to feed livestock, but I mean, I couldn't believe how fresh they were. I mean, the airmail from New Zealand used to be very good, very, very quick, but to think of the journey it had gone through, and just how long it lasted. sitting on my windowsill when there was 2 foot of snow outside.
Mm.
I remember getting one gift in my Christmas stocking, as I normally do. And I don't know if it'll be different this time, but anyway, I remember this, and it was a flat envelope. And I opened it, and all of a sudden, this is almost as though it's meant for this talk, because it was a locust that jumped out, but it was all bound up inside this envelope. And until you got it, you could have died of heart failure after it. I got such a fright. So that's just because it's related to the talk today.
Was it, so somebody gifted you a locust?
Yeah, it's one of these things that you can buy from overseas shops sometimes. And it was just a gimmicky thing, really. But to open the envelope, and this actually, it flew out at you, although you didn't realise till you saw what fell in front of you, what it was. I've still got it. I'll maybe send it to Stephen sometime.
I look forward to that with some trepidation. I was thinking about the rubbish that accumulates when you actually receive presents, that having a big bag full of wrapping paper after the presents are opened in a family setting. I think
we're the only family in the world that hands the scissors round when the bills get unwrapped. And,
oh no, there's others do it. There's others do it.
I haven't bought wrapping paper for a long time.
And you can't recycle it all anyway, because if it's got glitter on it and things like that, it doesn't.
Or metallic.
Recycle.
If it's metallic, you can't recycle it either. I had a present delivered this morning in a gift bag, and it was from my sister. My sister delivered it, and I just checked with her that she hadn't bought the gift bag. I said, I hope that's a recycled gift bag. She said, of course.
Well, this arrived this morning, and there's, you probably can't see it very well, but parcel tape, poly bag, and it's something that actually feels quite soft. It's from an old school friend of mine who packages things beautifully. And I was thinking when I saw that slide about the wrapping paper and things, and it was only a few years ago that somebody pointed out that most wrapping paper and stuff was not recyclable. My question is there such a thing as recycling tape, recyclable tape?
Yes. Yes.
There is, Anne.
Paper tape. You get sticky paper tape. You have to buy it from one of the plastic-free, well, that's where I've bought mine, from a plastic-free shop. I'll try and look up where I've got it from, Trish, and I'll let you know. Okay, because you should have my email anyway, I think. Yeah. I think I got mine from a little outlet in Glasgow called, no, I can't remember. I'll look it up. Thanks, Anne. I didn't go to Glasgow, it was sent. I think the things that were the gift bags, they were plain ones. But I think we were saying last night, some of us, how these gift bags, even the decorated ones, they go backwards and forwards, and you think, oh yes, I recognise that one. And I think you can use those without having to use wrapping paper and use them again and again. And so I think that is one thing. Anything you can get an extra life out of, and the more the better. Well, what I do is I put the present in the gift bag, and then I also keep tissue paper that I get sent. I scrumple up the tissue paper on the top so the gift is not visible, but it doesn't need to be wrapped individually. Duncan, what were you going to say?
Within our family, that's what we do. The same gift bags get recycled all the time. Yeah.
We don't use name tags on them very often because we know, like, oh, those bags Charlie likes, so her presents are in there, and those ones. And we play it pretty fast and loose. You know, you can get special bags that are for birthday or for Christmas. You get a birthday bag any time of year, and any bag is a birthday bag. Because it's, yeah, they just get passed around.
The comment I made the other night was that we used the old Christmas paper. You took it off very carefully and you used it to cover your school exercise books or whatever. That was one of the uses, but somebody else said they used wallpaper.
Yes.
So, but they were told they were very posh.
Yeah.
I have actually unrolled and flattened out the packaging that comes with tradecraft deliveries. They usually put, I think it comes on big rolls, and they rip it off and they scrump it all up to package the parcel. And I've been known to flatten that all out and keep it and reuse it as wrapping paper.
I can see that I've frozen, but I am here.
Yes, well, you're back.
I'm back. I think last week I was saying I remember being a kid and the brown paper bags that your shopping used to come in. My mom would take those apart and turn them inside out, so it was just plain brown paper, and then let me loose as a tiny with markers and glitter and rubber stamps and the rest of it. And so I made the wrapping paper for the year.
Excellent.
And got that reused. And then when we finished with it at Christmas, then we used it on my school books, so everything got reused.
You get the brown paper bags in Morrison's very regularly now. We're all beginning to understand that you don't buy what's wrapped up in one-time plastic.
Yes.
It's one thing I remember about shopping many years ago now with American friends when I stayed with them was the brown paper bags, when I think we were then starting to use branded plastic bags.
Yeah.
And do they still use the brown paper bags in the supermarkets for packing the food up, packing items up?
The last time that I was back, yes.
Mm.
But for a long time it was you could choose paper or plastic. A lot of cities in California have stopped the use of the plastic bags. So you're encouraged to bring your own, but then there's also brown paper ones. A lot of the shops as well.
The carrier bags in the cooperative near us are actually the kind you can use in the food recycling of your, the food waste.
Yeah.
So that's good, so long as the councilmen realise they are supposed to be there.
Yeah, that's the trick, isn't it? It sounds like your families are already on board with this. Do you think it would go over well if you had a conversation about the way that gifts were wrapped or the kinds of gifts that you would appreciate?
Yeah.
Be no problem.
Yeah, I figured.
I can't think of anybody within my families who would learn anything from that. I think we're all probably practicing it already.
Yeah.
We give a lot of alternative gifts, so it's a Christian Aid or Oxfam or one of the other ones. Voucher, not a voucher. You know what I mean by an alternative.
Yeah, the kind of virtual gift.
Yeah, the virtual gift. Yeah.
It's an ongoing conversation for us. My husband's family. My husband's the youngest of 3, and we do a secret Santa with all the adult children, their partners, and my in-laws. But different people have different philosophies. So, there's the people who send out their list of like, these are the 3 things that I would find useful. Here are the links to where you can buy them online. Thank you very much. I have calculated and it is below the threshold for the spending limit, including postage. And then there's people who, no matter what you send on a list, they want to choose it themselves. So it's an ongoing conversation to say, no, but here's what I would actually appreciate and use. We'll get there.
It can be tricky. It can be tricky because both the giving, both the buying for somebody else and the receiving, it's an emotional thing. It's not just the actual how much you spend and whether it's something you want or not. It's you're emotionally invested in it as well, and that has to be taken into consideration, I think, too.
Yeah. And there's different personality types, the kind of love language idea. Some people are really invested. Like you say, it's an emotional process to choose a gift for somebody. Did I cut somebody off, Duncan? Was that you?
No.
Oh, okay. so you've already, as I say, I'm singing to the choir. So the alternativity ideas are to use gift bags rather than wrapping paper. You're on it. Last week there was conversation of somebody ironing the wrapping paper to reuse it.
I just flattened mine.
Yeah.
I don't iron it.
No. Well, I think the rebuttal was if I had an iron, I'd iron my clothes. So there you go. And then giving time or experiences as gifts, or like you say, Anne, the kind of the voucher. Is it Anne or Trish?
Yeah. My sister-in-law has done the last couple of years. She's done something really nice, which is an experience that her siblings and their partners all do together. So she's bought us an afternoon tea, and then she's arranged for us all to go together to have the afternoon tea, sometime in the year, which has a double bonus because you're seeing each other and enjoying what she's bought for you. Yeah. She's very creative, very inventive.
Like that. And then I liked the suggestion to look at the disposable items that you use throughout the year, most of them kind of kitchen-y stuff. Disposable cups, water bottles, cling film. And then is there a way that you could stop using those and then use the reusable kind as gifts?
There's another one for your list, Charlie. Baking parchment, baking paper.
Ooh, oh, the silicone mats.
Yes, brilliant.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant.
I tried to make those cotton and beeswax wrap things because they're really expensive to buy them. So I tried to make them because I've got a friend who keeps bees, so she kept me in beeswax. But it is a lot of work to grate the wax down and then melt it. I still haven't quite perfected it, but that was my project in the summer. And then we got a dog, and the crafting in the house has gone right down at the moment. Okay, time for a quiz. Let me just move your lovely faces. So in addition to the kind of wrapping and packaging, there's also food waste. So have a guess. I've not made it multiple choice, so you just get to guess to the best of your knowledge. How many tons of plastic wrapping used for food will be discarded over the festive period? Write it down.
Lots.
Many.
In the thousands, I think.
Say again, Duncan?
Be in the thousands, I would think.
Maybe not tons. Maybe not thousands of tons.
I think it could be.
Oh, I think it could be.
Look at my crib sheet and see.
Probably less Christmas than in previous Christmases.
Yeah, this is for pre-2020 Christmas, so our averages might be a bit different this year. Brits eat how many million mince pies? Do you think? It's more than 1 million. 1 million mince pie cases is 1 ton of aluminium.
Not if you make your own.
Not if you make your own. This is true. The store-bought ones. But how many million mince pies do you think we eat?
Oh, a lot.
Since they've been selling them in Sainsbury's since the 1st of October,
yes.
That it must mount up over 3 months.
Yes, and I don't take a mince pie. I don't like them. They're very British.
You would like mine.
Yes.
You would like mine.
I'm sure that I would. But my husband more than makes up for it. I think he's had a mince pie every night since October, since they came into the shops. So
that must be about 40 million.
Okay, 40 million. And how many platefuls of food will we waste during December? Stephen,
I won't waste any, but
and this is go ahead, Duncan.
I wrote this down, but I'm not going to look in the book. I just know it was a lot.
A lot. And this is one that might be different this year.
Yes.
We were saying, because normally we'd get together with family, so you've got a big meal with a lot of people. So this year it might be smaller because people aren't cooking the big meals. But then my husband and I were thinking we still will want all of the trimmings, and it's harder to get 2 portions of pigs and blankets, Yorkies. Well, those you get from the freezer, but if you want all of the trimmings, you're actually setting yourself up for more wasted food, or to eat Christmas dinner for 3 days in a row, which is what we will end up doing, because it's harder to get the smaller portion sizes for fewer people. So are we ready for answers? 125,000 tons of plastic wrapping. 175 million mince pies.
A bit more than I said.
Yeah.
That's 3 each for everybody in Great Britain. Or the UK.
The UK. And 54 million platefuls of food.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Okay.
Merry, merry. So some more questions. Let me move you around my screen. Would your traditional meal, is it going to change this year because of the restrictions, given that they're changing by the minute at the moment? Oh, move just along. There we go. Are your meal plans changing this year?
The meal plan won't change. I think we'll end up with having it for 2 or 3 days, but we're all fortunate we've got freezers and things now to, you can use to avoid the waste.
Yeah.
I don't know what frozen Brussels sprouts would taste very. I don't think that would be very nice.
It certainly changes for me in that I normally went out for my Christmas meal.
That will be different then, for sure.
It won't change. It won't change for me because I'm always on my own on Christmas Day anyway. Sometimes go to friends for Boxing Day and help them eat up their turkey. So because I'm only cooking for myself. But I am thinking generally that there could be a lot more waste because of the uncertainty over the rules and regulations, and people won't know what they're doing and will already have ordered stuff. I mean, I've ordered stuff from our local butcher, which I'll pick up on Christmas Eve, and but I think there could this year be more waste simply because of the unknowns. If you've already ordered a £15 turkey and you end up with only 2 of you, it's even in spite of the freezers only take so much.
A lot of days of turkey sandwiches. We did an American Thanksgiving. We normally would do it for my husband's whole family. They've adopted me when it comes to food and food-based holidays. But we had Thanksgiving dinner for a full weekend last month, which I was not complaining about. But it is a bit of thinking ahead and finding different ways to reheat Brussels sprouts. If it were a normal year and you were wanting to have a less waste Christmas, do you think the people that you celebrate with would be on board with that, or do you think it would be a bit of arm twisting?
No, I think our family would all consider very carefully what you were doing.
Yeah, likewise.
I don't think that it's possible to avoid, I think your middle bullet point, I don't think it's possible to avoid single-use plastics.
Yeah, unfortunately, no. I just had my delivery from Asda last night to last me over Christmas, and it did annoy me that some of the things not only were they pre-packaged, but there was then a further plastic bag around them, which of course I put in the bin. Can't recycle it.
I tend to get loose things, buy loose if I can, but and sometimes I have been known large items to take them out the bag, but that doesn't help when they come to go through the till and they haven't got a barcode. But I'm not sure I'd have the nerve to take a bag of Brussels sprouts and tip it out. I think that, you know, trotting down the conveyor belt might cause a bit of consternation.
It's almost like performance art.
That's when you shop in Morrison's and you get a brown paper bag to put the Brussels sprouts in.
Yeah, well, I mostly shop for my fruit and veg at Julian's at the garden centre, which Anne will know about, the very good greengrocer that operates pretty much like an overgrown market stall, and he's brilliant. Well, they're brilliant, and you can usually get stuff loose there. But it is very, very difficult. I mean, if you buy a box of dates or whatever, and there's cling film, and you know, if it's often the little treaty things rather than the basics. But I do remember going to the deli counter once and buying something there rather than off the shelf, thinking I'd get less packaging, and I ended up with more, which really annoyed me. Why people can't go back? I mean, so many things that you buy that are in trays, why can I not use cardboard trays? I mean, there's one or two things I buy that if I look and see if there's an alternative of the same but in a cardboard tray. Scampi is one thing that you can get it in cardboard trays, not in plastic trays.
One or two things in my delivery this time, in fact, are in trays that say they are fully recyclable. It's about the first time I've seen that.
Is that the kind of cardboardy ones?
They almost look like plastic, but presumably they're a type of cardboard.
Okay. And then different councils are better for, which council are you in, Duncan?
Murray,
Yeah.
which is quite good for recycling generally.
Right, yes, because in Borders we can recycle supermarket carrier bags.
Oh, right.
You can too.
I save the supermarket ones to use in the smaller bins around the house.
Yes.
But I don't think we can recycle them in our plastic bin, but I think you can take them into the shop to recycle them.
Usually have collection point.
But that puts the onus back on you to do it. And this group maybe would do that, but not everybody would.
We're all going to get a gold star today, Stephen. Do you hear that?
Yes.
You've still got a couple more questions to do. Don't be too optimistic.
No, I knocked off the last ones. These are the end of our questions.
The halos will be down here before we're finished.
I thought that was a really interesting point about how would other people react, and I suppose the big question this year is if people are going to actually see other people as well over Christmas. So I think that was really interesting. Trish's point, and obviously Duncan getting his delivery. There's a kind of uncertainty for some people around that if they feel their friends and family are isolated, but also they need to be isolated because of health reasons. And I think that's for some people it's quite a challenging thing, and they might have already wasted money on food, so they're already worried about food waste because they know they're not going to have visitors or guests. They've maybe decided that after they've ordered it. So that's interesting. I think people are thinking about it more carefully this year. And what's really important in terms of how do you celebrate? And
exactly.
And I think a lot of people will be short of cash in money in any sort of form, and I think the thing is most of the people I know are of a generation that were brought up with make, do and mend and save and reuse and don't waste. I think it'd be interesting to have a conversation with young families, young adults with children. All the ones I know are from the same sort of family that have been brought up to be more careful, and often send us advice because they've discovered something, because they're more savvy with the internet. They find out things and tell us. So, but I think it must be difficult. It must be very difficult, I think, for people with families to choose between food and presents. Perhaps some people might have a rather more simple Christmas dinner because they realise that some of the trappings are unnecessary. Then if you've got children who don't like Brussels sprouts anyway, why have them? You know, why not do a meal that everybody will enjoy? But I think a lot of people will be committed, and it's going to be tricky, and that's going to go back all the way down. If people cancel orders, that's going to go back all the way down the line to the producers.
I think the saddest thing is the pressure that people are made to feel to have a certain type of celebration. That's the saddest thing, and the pressure is put on us by the big international companies that want us to spend money on them.
I mean, we're talking about advertising the other night, and one thing that I'm increasingly noticed as Christmas and New Year approaches is the adverts for alcohol.
Yes, of course.
And the bargains you can get and all the rest of it. And it hadn't struck me how much people actually do buy until at the beginning of the year. I happened to be in Morrison's in Berwick because I'd had to take my little dog to the vet for surgery down there. And so I thought, oh, I'll go into the big Morrison's, which I hate because I get lost in there. And as I was putting the stuff into my car, the guy next to me was loading up with alcohol, and I said, that's going to be some party. He says, oh, we come down from East Lothian because it's cheaper. With Berwick being south of the border, you know, it that made me think quite a bit, I must say. But you know, there is this pressure to buy things that aren't really necessary.
I didn't pull it for this conversation, but ALTERnativity has got a whole reflection on that, on, you know, when did you feel pressured to spend more money than you maybe should have, and how did that then spiral out for the new year for you? Think about, because it's a lot of pressure. I know for my generation, it's, you know, does your celebration look good on Instagram?
Well, I mean, this is it. People who make a meal and then take a photograph of it. I mean, this is beyond my comprehension completely.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I make a meal that good, I just want to eat it. The only time I took a photograph of food was the first time I went to Austria in 1976, and I saw this window with all these torta in, and I stood outside drooling and took a photograph of it. And I made a point of, I have to say, however long the walk was, because it was a walking holiday, I managed to stagger back into the town and go visit this particular shop.
It is 2 o'clock. I don't want to keep you. I'm happy to stay on for a bit longer if you've got questions or things that you'd like to keep talking about, but I want to honor your time. I've got a responsive prayer that we can do together if you're up for it. So I will move your lovely faces so that I can read what's on my screen. There we go. I will read the plain bits, and then if you read the bold, we will wrap up with this, and then, like I say, I'll stay on for a couple of minutes afterward. Mysterious God, may we never lose our sense of wonder about the surprise and delight of Christmas.
May we seek it out, even in the midst of our less than perfect lives.
Forgive us when we have been wasteful with the earth's resources, too intent on our own ease of use rather than what is sustainable.
Lord God, you created this planet to nourish and sustain us all.
Lord of all people, help us to make wise decisions and make us aware of how we may influence others.
Help us to think about the choices we make and how we can tread lightly on the earth. Amen.
Thanks so much for joining in today. Thanks for having me.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much, Charlie. If we could show a little round of applause for Charlie, please, virtual or otherwise.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.